And so there is no ultimate purpose that you could present that can't be questioned in exactly that way.
And suppose God had said to us, or you came to discover, that according to God, our purpose on earth is to generate as much CO2 as possible to feed the plants and the trees. We're doing a very good job of it.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be satisfying even if it came from the creator of the universe. You can easily show that it's just having come from God wouldn't make it a satisfying purpose if it was otherwise unsatisfying.
Yeah. And another way to see that is that let's take what is very often called the ultimate purpose by theists, and that is the ultimate purpose of human life is to glorify God. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't see that as a very valuable purpose. I mean, it's kind of like Kim Jong-il telling all of his citizens, your purpose is to glorify me and make me feel good about myself. It's just not a very impressive purpose.
And it might actually be, in the end, pleasurable, highly pleasurable to do that, to engage in that activity. But I can easily envision, let's say, you and me up there enjoying this beatific vision of God, and I'll elbow you and ask, is this it? This is the experience that makes everything worthwhile, that justifies the Holocaust and makes all evil comprehensible.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be hard at all to wonder how it is that this experience answers every question. So I think people who have offered ultimate purpose as a reason for accepting theism and rejecting atheism, first of all, haven't read Nagel, which I find puzzling in the case of Craig, who's written for years on this topic, and Nagel's article is about the most famous article in English on the topic of life's absurdity. I find it very puzzling that, so far as I can tell, he's never even cited Nagel or discussed him.
Well, so you say philosophy of religion is too important to leave to the theists. Now, some headway has been made, not so much in philosophy of religion, but in the public square with the new atheists. So, what do you think about that?
Unlike some people, I don't have strong opinions about the new atheists. I do think they're doing an important service in getting ordinary people who are non-believers to be less shy about their non-belief or their atheism.
Yeah.
That's one important service. And it's possible they've performed a service in getting ordinary people who are theists to think more deeply about assumptions that they have never been encouraged to examine.
Yeah. So what would you like to see happening in the public debate between theism and atheism, in addition to the things that you just mentioned?
Well, for one thing, I'd like the quality of the public's thinking on these issues to be much better than it now is. Maybe I can illustrate what I mean by giving you an example from my own recent experience. An administrative colleague of mine at Acadia attended the recent public debate that I mentioned to you. And afterward, this person bought me a gift, almost as a response, I think, to what I'd said in the debate about God and suffering.
Uh-huh.
Now, the gift was a Christian inspirational novel by William Paul Young called The Shack. Have you heard of it?
No.
Well, I'm surprised in a way because it is apparently a runaway hit. It has sold over 10 million copies. It has been translated into 34 languages.
Oh my God. Well, it's really not my genre.
Nor is it mine, but it was a gift and I read it. And of course, no book by any of the new atheists can compete with those numbers. And I'm not even sure that all of the new atheist books combined can compete with those numbers.
No.
As I say, a runaway bestseller. Now, this novel, The Shack, has been condemned as heretical and unbiblical by some prominent Christians. And I don't myself care whether it's heretical or unbiblical, but I do care that it's the most intellectually shallow, childish, morally frivolous novel I've ever read. And again, I received it as a gift with the endorsement of a colleague, an intelligent professional who has a PhD in psychology. And I can't understand how this person would be anything but embarrassed by the book. It's that bad. But regardless of your religious perspective, the wild popularity of this book is a bad sign. If it reflects the quality of the public's thinking on these issues, then we are in deep trouble, and we need to do something about it.
What is wrong with the book in particular, for those who have read it?
It's hard to sum up briefly, but I'll read you what it has on the back cover of the book. And this is to give far too much publicity to a very, very bad novel. But it says, quote, "In a world where religion seems increasingly irrelevant, The shack wrestles with the timeless question, where is God in a world so filled with unspeakable pain? The answer Mac gets, he's the lead character there, will astound you and perhaps transform you as much as it did him, unquote. All right, so that grabbed me, the back of the book promising to talk about that question. So here's what happens. Mac's young daughter is brutally murdered, and Mac gets to spend the weekend with God some years later, asking God questions. So any theistic father will ask God the question that Mac ends up asking. As God puts it in their conversation, could I have prevented what happened to Missy, the daughter? The answer is yes. So this occurs on page 224. So we're 224 pages into the narrative, and God's about to give the explanation we've all been waiting for. And here's what God says. I could have chosen to actively interfere in her circumstance. I could have chosen to save her from the murderer. But, and I'm quoting, that was not an option for purposes that you cannot possibly understand now. Unquote. That's it. That's all we get. Cannot possibly understand. Now my reaction would be, well, try me, and let's see if I can't understand. Say something, right? It's the central question of the whole novel, and the novel punts on that question. The back cover was correct. I was astounded by the answer that Mac gets. I mean, I was expecting at least this much from God. What Missy endured was required for her own greater good, although, Mac, you might not understand how that could be. That's at least a partial answer, right? What Missy went through was required for her own good. Mind you, that answer does, as I've argued, undermine our moral obligations, but at least it's a better answer than the one that Mac actually gets. Nevertheless, it is wildly successful, selling millions upon millions of copies, and judging from the endorsements that the book gets, it's influencing a lot of people. But if that's the quality of public thinking on the issue, that's a very sad sign. So what can we do about it? Well, I'm thinking we can use the internet. Your podcast and your very active blog are definitely steps in the right direction. Maybe the blogosphere can help us where the schools evidently have failed us. If that's the level of public thinking, the schools have not done their job. Or maybe we can demand more from the schools. Maybe we can require a critical thinking course taught by properly trained teachers as a condition of graduating from high school.
Well, they've experimented with that, I think, in Australia and somewhere else that I can't remember right now, and it did measurably increase test scores, so maybe it would catch on.
If the shack and if the popularity of this book are a sign of the quality of public theology, that's really worrisome. It's as if religion has created a thought-free zone around itself, as no other human activity has. And we need to sort of pierce that zone and get in there and get people thinking more critically.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you boldly charging into that thought-free zone with some thoughts, and I hope you continue to do so. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.